What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, we did have Nintendo's Direct Air that, well, was a bit unique for them as it showed off their take on a museum, and, well, it's definitely a Nintendo museum. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about what looks like Microsoft gearing up to indeed announce another one of their games going to PlayStation, but this still just brings up the question of, what is Microsoft waiting for here? And then we'll also be talking about Final Fantasy 16 because we finally got that PC announcement as well as a demo. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're gonna start today with what I can only surmise as a shot at me from Capcom. No other explanation here as, well, you can see the trailer. Yes, Funko Fusion is getting Mega Man. Yep, that's Capcom for you. Thanks for this one. Okay, anyway, yes, Mega Man will be part of this game. It is releasing September 13th for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S, and it'll follow up on the PlayStation 4 and the Switch on November 15th. So, I saw this and I said, okay, that figures. But I feel like this is that situation where I'm just gonna kind of bank this and go, okay, I'm going through all this along with many other Mega Man fans out there, I'm sure. But the hope is that eventually we come out the other side and there is some new Mega Man game, a new Mega Man X game, Legends, Battle Network. We'll pretty much take anything at this point. Kind of like what happened, if you remember, with Splinter Cell and Ubisoft. They kept doing some weird stuff where they put Sam Fisher in like a hero shooter, had him have cameos in some of their other big games, and then eventually they announced that there was a remake for Splinter Cell. So I'm hoping that Capcom is just reminding people that yes, Mega Man still exists, and they're doing so because they will eventually have a new game in one of the series for Mega Man. Here's hoping that happens soon. Otherwise, though, yeah, we got Funko Fusion to look forward to. Also, we did have a new King Kong game that got announced, but it's a bit different than most people were expecting. You can see the trailer here. This is Kong Survivor Instinct. Now, this is a cinematic trailer, although they did have a trailer that showed gameplay as well, it seemed. And, well, originally people went into this thinking you were going to play as Kong, but then it showed you playing as a survivor, or just a person, and it's a 2D platformer style game. I will say it looks kind of janky with what was going on screen, and I guess it sort of reminded me a bit of like Shadow Complex with how they were showing it, but then we saw some of the movement and the platforming, and not quite as tight as that game. But I guess it's different. It's coming out later this fall, so I guess we'll get more information around a release date. If anything, at least it's different than what you expect from a game like this, so might be worth a look, of course, based on reviews and price point. Oh, and we do have Hideo Kojima doing Kojima things on Twitter X for his official account here, just showing a picture that says, "Who am I? DS2 or Death Stranding 2, and I assume this is just a new character that's going to be introduced at some point. Now, of course, the timing of this tweet and this image being put out there, the silhouette, lines up with, we figure, Gamescom. Jeff Keighley, of course, hosting Opening Night Live. Seems like a good spot for Kojima to show up there in person with a new trailer, maybe giving us a look at some gameplay and talking about what makes this different, say, from the first Death Stranding game, which I hope there is quite a bit different, and just in general, so it doesn't feel like the exact same game. And of course, Kojima getting more time with the engine and the setting and maybe the different characters. They can come up with other things you can do outside of just, yes, delivering packages. Even though that ended up being a bit more interesting than you expect when you hear that, I'd still like to see maybe a new direction for Death Stranding 2, but maybe we'll see more actually later on today with Open Night Live. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and their Direct they aired yesterday, and this was pretty much Miyamoto's Direct as he essentially walked us around the museum for about 13 minutes and then also outlined some interactive stations and elements to it that, I mean, what does make it very unique and very Nintendo. Well, we can actually see the Direct here as we go through some of the elements to it. Starting with the top floor, which does show off historical pieces from Nintendo's history, And I mean, they go way, way back in time. I mean, it's talking about like when they were making the Hanafuda cards and stuff, but they talked about even how they were making these like plug and play systems in the 70s before they released the Famicom, even mentioning, hey, this is when Miyamoto came aboard, was when we were doing these plug and play multiple games in one systems. And they showed some things that people probably aren't really familiar with, whether it was like a copying machine, it looked like they had like an exercise bike. So it was pretty cool, that top floor, to see all of these different setups here to show the history of Nintendo. And then at the top of it, they had just screens that showed different games from different time periods, being able to compare them with visuals or gameplay changes and differences and things they discovered along the way between releases. Again, kind of to outline the history and the progression of all of these different franchises under Nintendo. They also have what looked like floating controllers and systems above everyone, and they were much larger than a regular controller or system. So kind of a fun decoration there, but we'll actually come back to those later on with some of the interactive stations. Now, they do mention that when you go to, I guess, just the first floor, as that was the top floor with all of the historical pieces, the first floor has all the interactive elements. So there's a giant screen floor that looks like it works even with your smartphone. You can control and change things right underneath of your feet, which is kind of cool. And they did mention 8 interactive attractions. They showed off 3 here in this direct, and they mentioned a website that they had now open that I would assume will have more information on the other 5. But most likely they showed off these 3 specifically because they were maybe the highlights, I guess. So the first station, you go into a room that's set up like it's out of the 80s in Japan, and they'll just launch what look kind of like ping pong balls at you as you hit them with a bat, and they'll hit different things around the room. They may light up or move or just interact in general, and kind of fun. I mean, I don't know, like a batting cage in a person's bedroom, I guess, or just office. Sort of a fun idea. Again, this is very Nintendo-like with their take on a museum. The second station is a light gun setup. So you look like the Nintendo blasters, you had super scopes, and you're literally just shooting at a screen and a bunch of different stations set up right next to each other, taking out all these like ducks from Duck Hunt or other things from different Nintendo games. And the third station are giant controllers, where it looks like you work together with a partner to beat classic games. Like they showed off Mario here, which is the standard Nintendo controller. And like that's cool. The one that I think really stood out to a lot of people is the giant Wii remote and look like nunchuck. So I can only imagine playing some of those motion-based games with a massive Wii remote. Now, in order to play these different games, you will get a ticket when you go into the museum. Each ticket comes preloaded with 10 coins. However, 10 coins is apparently not enough to play all the different interactive stations. And I guess once you're out of coins, that's it. You're done. So maybe you have to go back again to get another 10 coins on a ticket and then try the ones you didn't get to play. Odd decision, because you actually can't buy additional coins. So it seemed like they were set up beautifully to obviously just make more money, but maybe they're thinking if somebody comes by and they just stick around the whole time and take up maybe a station, they won't be able to have like this, like, I guess just traffic or free-flowing traffic of people coming through, because I mean, this is going to be absolutely crushed with tourists or just people checking it out constantly, I'm sure, especially in the first few months. They do also mention a gift shop that will have exclusive merchandise, as well as a cafeteria and restaurant being available. And I will give Nintendo credit here. This is a legitimately interesting idea for a museum with more of the interactive stuff. It seemed like on that top floor where you just go through and see historical pieces, it was a bit more straightforward as a museum, but I will say, just looking at how much stuff they had in each cabinet, seems like there's a lot to discover there, and I'm sure when people do make the trip out there and they're able to get in starting October 2nd, there'll be all kinds of pictures being taken and people describe, I'm sure, maybe little Easter eggs or things they found from Nintendo's history that are basically hidden away. As for the other section with the interactive stuff, kind of feels like Nintendo took a museum and then mashed it together with a Dave & Buster's, which, yeah, I mean, it makes it fun, and that's kind of Nintendo's idea, is to make things interesting and fun for the entire family. Now, I don't know if I would travel out to Japan specifically for the museum, even though I do think it looks pretty cool to go to and it'd be a lot of fun. but it seems like something if I was out in Japan for whatever reason, that I would make the time to go out and check it out. But hey, let me know if you're thinking about making the trip out there to check out this museum, whether it's, I guess, as soon as possible, starting October 2nd. You might want to do reservations right now on their website as that's open, and I feel like they're gonna book that place pretty quick. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft and a big release for Xbox that we think is coming out this year, but it appears it's also going to be heading to the PlayStation 5 here pretty soon. Now, this is coming way of Nate the Hate, we can see over on Twitter X. Right, you say Machine Games Indiana Jones and the Great Circle release on Xbox and PC this holiday, December, as a timed console exclusive. After this timed exclusive window expires, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is planned to come to PlayStation 5 in the first half of 2025. So I figured December makes a lot of sense. It's wide open right now, whereas November, pretty packed right now, and I think it'll become more packed after Gamescom and then Tokyo Game Show. So yeah, if I'm Indiana Jones, I would want to have at least a decent buffer away from like Call of Duty, that larger release. So December, first week, sure, drop it in there, you're good to go. But the idea of it then also going to PlayStation 5 potentially 5 months later is... This is very strange for Microsoft. Look, I know it's a licensed property from Disney and Lucasfilm, which isn't cheap, but we have seen not only Sony, but also Nintendo, by the way, keep some of those Marvel games just on their platform. So Spider-Man, obvious one there. Wolverine, another big one. But what about Ultimate Alliance 3? How come that's not on another platform yet? Is it because Nintendo had the publishing rights for it and they really haven't given it up? That's all I can assume at this point, because I don't have that game at a locked 60 frames per second on literally any other system, at least officially released. I know you can just emulate the Switch stuff, but I would like to see that game just go on PlayStation, Xbox, and more there, but enough about that. The point is, I think this is more about Microsoft wanting to continue exploring these multi-platform releases, and I'm now to the point of, if you're going to go this route, just go all in, because there is massive potential there to just become the biggest publisher in gaming. Think about Microsoft currently, all the intellectual properties they control with Bethesda and now Activision Blizzard, and of course just Microsoft's own properties. And you look around and go, wow, they have a lot. Well, yes, now they could pretty much outclass everyone just in gaming when it comes to releases and probably the amount of money they generate from releasing on as many consoles as possible, especially with Nintendo's new system coming up. You have stuff on the PS5, the Switch 2, and Xbox's platform whenever their next generation comes out. It seems like it's wide open for them to just make boatloads of money, but they're doing this thing where they're half in, half out, and it seems like not only they're confused, but also just the general consumer base is also confused as to what exactly is staying on Xbox and what's going to PlayStation. But I know at this time, it's not technically official, but Gamescom is happening later today, so we'll see what Microsoft has to say about this, if they do indeed mention this, say, in interviews, because there's going to be quite a bit of discussion around Indiana Jones after they make the reveal for the release date, probably later on today, as they also have different streams that are set up for Indiana Jones under Microsoft's banner at Gamescom. So I'm sure they'll probably mention the idea of it going to other platforms, and I'm very curious how exactly they present that to everyone. Next up, let's talk about Final Fantasy 16 on PC, as we've had some hints in different developer interviews, as well as just updates for things like NVIDIA's drivers, seeming to point to it coming out actually pretty soon. And in fact, it is. It's coming out in less than a month. There was a full trailer that was released for it, and there's even a demo that you can try out right now. In fact, it's up on Steam, and the game itself is currently set up for a price of $49.99. And that's actually great, because obviously they could have shown up here with a $70 price point and been like, hey, you waited this long and it's still the same price. But no, $50. And you know what? For Final Fantasy 16, I think it's a pretty good price. I actually like the game quite a bit. I'm going back through it on New Game Plus with Final Fantasy mode, which is like the hardest difficulty, because I am going to work up to the DLC, and I just want to try to get as much of it done as I can. Might end up with the Platinum Trophy, actually, at this rate. We'll see there. But I will say, Genki did point out an older interview from earlier this year, I think in March, with Yoshi P, who talked about the PC version of the game. Just kind of a refresher here, mentioning that some of the frame rates will reach over 100 FPS, depending, of course, on your setup, specifically, I'm sure your GPU. It will support ultra-wide monitor, which is good because right now with the demo, it doesn't seem to. I assume that's going to be something that shows up on release, but we'll keep an eye out there. Mouse and keyboard customization, although I would fully recommend using a controller of some kind, I guess Xbox or PlayStation or some sort of third-party controller. This isn't necessarily a game that I would look at and say, yes, use the mouse and keyboard. You will, of course, need a good SSD. This is a game that is going to be stressing your storage medium quite a bit. It also mentioned 170 gigabytes is required for this game to install. So yeah, quite a bit of free space there. And it is releasing September 17th. But definitely exciting stuff here because the game looked good on the PS5. It's going to look incredible on a well-equipped PC and have like high frame rates. The ultra-wide monitor support is something I am really keeping an eye on here because that is another thing that I think this game could really benefit from. But just in general, being able to reach more people with a game like this is very important, as it's not a cheap game for them to create, and Final Fantasy has been struggling a bit, we'll say, when it comes to sales and just notoriety. It's certainly been declining since like the PS2 days. Just consistently each generation. So I'm hoping having it release here on PC, and seems like Xbox, based on some other interviews, I wouldn't be shocked if it shows up there as well. Maybe they get the Game Pass check cut to them and then they'll just get more revenue there. So a lot of potential on that side. But yeah, exciting stuff. If you're curious about it, the demo is now live. I will tell you though, doesn't work great on really any PC handheld currently. I tried it on the Steam Deck OLED. Not great. I tried it on the new ROG Ally, the newest one with the expanded memory. Also not great, so it needs some optimization patches for the Steam Deck and others in order to get to, I'll say, an acceptable performance. But you can check it out for yourself on Steam with the demo. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Silent Hill 2, as previews did go live, and there have been a lot of concerns around this game with Bloober Team behind it for, a good part of a year now, and a lot of that is coming from, of course, just classic Silent Hill fans. People who really like Silent Hill 2 have been unsure as to how this is going to end up with Bloober Team at the helm. But we've also heard from Bloober Team's CEO that they're not really sure why Konami is presenting it the way they are in some of these trailers. But after putting it in the hands of many outlets, it seems like Silent Hill 2 is actually pretty good. Now, these previews seem to come from the first few hours of the game, so keep that in mind. There are, of course, other things we need to see towards the end of the game, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that with full reviews. But so far, so good. We can go over some of the highlights here, as well as taking a look at some of the previews. Now, right off the top, significantly better than what the trailers have shown. All the previews seem to mention that, so it does make you raise your eyebrows at Konami and the way they've been marketing this thing. Visually impressive. Lots of fog. So again, big Silent Hill fans out there, you can rest easy. There's fog all over the place. Some areas from the original have been expanded. There's no load screens between rooms. I think one preview mentioned you can kind of get ambushed here and there by enemies because you don't have load screens, so you're not even expecting it at times. You can set the difficulty for puzzles separately from the main game itself, which I know there are people out there who just want to skip the puzzles entirely. Technically, you can make them as easy as possible and almost breeze through them, I guess, that way. And Bloober Team does seem to be doing a good job retaining that sense of dread from the original by leveraging just quiet moments in the game, which is good because there's the concern that they would try to lean more into the action side of things and make it feel less and less like a horror game. Not the case, though. The dialogue, though, this is brought up as even silly or campy at times, so might be hit or miss depending for gamers. Lots of accessibility options though, which is great. And just overall previews seem very positive for Silent Hill 2. This is of course coming out October 8th, just in time for like the Halloween spooky time period. So I'm much more excited about this now. Just hearing some of the previews, having some of the concerns put at ease here, and hopefully that means that Silent Hill 2 comes out and gets good reviews and it actually ends up being a good game, because I don't think anyone wanted to see Silent Hill 2 get remade and it just be a terrible game and really just do damage to not only the franchise, but a classic that people do hold up in some cases as one of the best games ever made with Silent Hill 2. So yes, I'm excited to check this one out, even as someone who's not a long-time big Silent Hill fan. I was still looking forward to checking it out myself. So I will be doing that again first week of October. We'll see how this one turns out. And Bloober Team, maybe getting a bit of a redemption arc here. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, Indiana Jones is reportedly heading the PS5 in 2025. If you're getting it, where are you going to play this game? Okay, 32% say Xbox. I saw many people in the comments, whether it's for Xbox or PC, mention, yeah, I'm just going to get it on Game Pass, so one of those two options. But 44% say they're going to wait a few months to get it on PS5, and I assume then buy it at $70, which, hey, I mean, if you have the PS5 and you don't have a solid enough PC to play it, or you don't even want to deal with just PC gaming in general, you don't have an Xbox, that's your option. And I feel like that's where Microsoft is now. Maybe they look at this and go, you know what? We don't believe that good games will sell hardware. I mean, Phil Spencer has said that outright during an interview, I believe, with Kind of Funny. So we already kind of know their view in general on this kind of thing. And maybe they're thinking, you know, we'll just meet gamers where they are with a game that isn't exactly cheap for us to create with the licensing and stuff behind it. So it's a weird time right now for Microsoft, it seems. Again, half in, half out. Go all in and just make a ton of money and become the biggest publisher in gaming. Maybe that's what they're currently doing right now with this transition. We're like in between right now, and maybe when they start their next generation system in a few years, it'll just be all multi-plat stuff, and the hardware that they present will have some kind of wrinkle or extra feature that will set it apart on its own. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day as we're seeing here. This is from Capricorn, who says, not again with the Switch 2 rumors. So glad for digital bookmarks so I can skip Switch 2 sections. We almost got through the whole video without anything Switch 2 related, but the comments just had to bring it up. This time it wasn't me, right? It was the people in the comment. I do have the stuff at the bottom timestamp, so yes, you can skip through it. I will say though, I can see the analytics, and it does show that there is just genuine interest in Switch 2 related stuff. So yeah, I understand there are people who are very fatigued on it, but there are also a lot of people who just want to hear more and more about this thing. Maybe because it's becoming more tangible, since Nintendo themselves not only have said that it's getting announced this fiscal year, but they continue to follow up every single tweet about an event saying that they're not going to talk about their next generation device at that event. So really, we're just waiting for them to announce a direct, and then they don't reply with that, and then we go, okay, I guess this is finally it. So hey, we figure a Nintendo Direct is coming up, as traditionally it happens in September. We'll see if they follow up with a reply that their next generation device won't be there, because if not, I mean, we're assuming we're about to see their new system. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. And if you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll have it up here in a card next to me. Or maybe you want to see how Mario Maker would work on a Nintendo 64, like the actual Nintendo 64 system. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.